You know how I'm always bringing on interviews on the channel to help me share with you guys some of the rich social work journeys that are out there, right? Well, today on the channel, I'm doing something a little different. Still an interview, but this time I'm the one that's being interviewed. So I brought back my girlfriend, Marie Sparks. You might remember her from some previous conversations that we've had on the channel. And in this conversation, she's going to be asking me the questions. And I thought this would be fun to give some of you some behind the scenes information on what my rich social work journey has looked like. So hopefully this will be insightful, informative, and maybe even inspirational if you're thinking about going on a rich social work journey as well and starting your business, especially if you're thinking about starting a coaching business. So it goes a little long, so I hope you have your coffee or tea or smoothie or whatever, but I promise if you stick with us till the end, it'll totally be worth it. All right, ready? Here is Marie Sparks' conversation with me, Eva Forde.
So Eva,
Hi,
I
my
am
friend.
excited to see you.
I know, right?
It is very, very, very good to be in a place where I'm interviewing you about being a rich social worker
And the journey.
and the
Journey.
journey. Yeah, the
Absolutely.
journey.
Yeah.
The last week when I was reflecting, I was thinking, okay, both of us were happened to be in Jamaica,
Mm-hmm.
and both of us were, from coming from different backgrounds. I was coming from the UK, you were coming from the US. And I remember everybody saying, oh, Miss Sparks, you have to meet. You have to meet Miss Forde. You have to meet Miss Eva Forde. Don't you know Miss Eva Forde? And I said, no, I don't know Miss Eva Forde. Well, Miss Sparks, can you make time to meet her? I connected with your students on another piece of program, and then eventually Miss Forde came through the door with your books and your folders and your bag and your big smile on your face, and I remember the students being so happy that the two of us were in the same room.
Yeah. Back in my teaching days.
Yeah, that was back in your teaching days.
Yeah.
And I just remember that there was just so much activity surrounding both of us. You were surrounded by students, and I was surrounded by children and dogs and rabbits. And we stood up and had this conversation, and it almost felt like the world stood still for both of us.
Yeah.
It was very surreal because all of this activity was happening around us, yet our connection was instant. And we just stood and time stood still while we just talked and talked.
It's so funny you say that because I do not remember our connection being instant. I remember wanting to connect with you instantly and you being very clear on your boundaries. Like, no, this is not how this works. And I was like, oh, okay, but I want us to be friends. But I do remember it didn't take long for us to kind of get on the same page and having so many conversations about our visions for, social work and social workers and work in Jamaica and eventually kind of our own businesses, and always coming back to this idea that, boy, we're doing big things, like we're dreaming big dreams. And I've always been very grateful to have you on this journey. So I thought you have to be the one to have this conversation with. It could be no one else.
That is good to know. And it's strange how, both of us in the same place, remembering things from the different sides of the room. There's one of the things that I felt that immediately as we began to talk. You were very, very clear and transparent with me when you said, wow, I think I was saying to you, oh, hang on a minute, I have to work out where and how we can meet with all these things going on. And I think I was saying, okay, I need to meditate, or I need to do yoga. I need to do yoga tomorrow. And then I've got, the children.
Mhm.
And you said that to me at one point, I wish I could have your life,
Mhm.
because it wasn't filled with assignments and
Mhm.
office duties. And I'd kind of stepped out of that um in terms of my work life for a couple of years. So I was already, on that entrepreneurial journey.
Mhm.
And you were telling me that you wished you could have this life. And I was like, sure,
Mhm.
you can have this life.
Mhm.
And I remember at that point, um, a sense of like a coin dropping for
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
when we continue to discuss what having this. It wasn't that you wanted my life, it was
Mhm.
that you wanted to have a different social work life,
Mhm.
a different life. But I felt, very much connected with the fact that you still wanted to continue doing social work, but you wanted to do it differently.
Mhm.
So tell me what you remember of that day, if you remember that conversation.
Well,
What was going on for you?
actually, I think you might be referring to, earlier on in our relationship when you were living at a place where you don't have the house now in Jamaica, um, in Mayday.
Yeah,
And yeah,
absolutely.
but when I always remember my coin drop was, this is years ago when I was already thinking about leaving my substantial post at NCU, and you had come over on like a Sunday, and I remember there were test papers that I was overwhelmed and I was not happy. So this was what I remember, again, was years down. Not to say that we didn't have several conversations before then,
Mm.
because there was a conversation that was pivotal for me, that a friend of yours and I had at your place in Mayday. And I said, I don't want to be rich. I just want to have enough money, to have my needs met. Do you remember that friend?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. I do.
And she stopped me dead in my tracks. She was like, Roy, what do you mean you don't want to be rich? Like, what is that about? And it's so funny because now when I hear social workers say that, I have the exact same conversation, except now I'm on the side that she was on. And, very short amount of time, she kind of walked me through what my thinking was about wealth and money and what that meant. And, I had brought up some things like, oh, I don't want to be stingy and I don't want to be, just greedy. And she said, well, do you know any rich people? And I thought, and I said, actually, no, I don't. She said, well, I know a lot of rich people, and they're some of the most generous people that I know. She said, of course, you know, money doesn't make you, it reveals you to yourself, but you probably need to spend some time thinking about what you could do with all of the money that you have. And if you're a generous person, you can continue to be generous. And I remember that conversation happened in your kitchen in Mayday, and that like shifting something in me. I've really had a lot of shifts in your presence. I'll say that. And but fast forward to, when I was thinking about leaving teaching university, and you had come over the weekend, and you were telling me that you were gonna get your nails done or something that normal people do on the weekend. You were gonna be doing during the week, and I remember saying like, I want that, and you saying, yeah, you could have it, and really like kind of because I had been reading, I think Think and Grow Rich, and uh, that book has within it different stories of people who went essentially from rags to riches. And I kept looking for, when is my, I know I'm writing my story now, but when am I going to have that pivotal moment? So I was always looking for these pivotal shifting moments. And that was a pivotal shifting moment for me. I was like, huh, I think something shifted. And that was the moment that I remember like plotting, like, okay, I need to be able to do this. I need to figure out a way. And it wasn't, it left being just something nice to have and kind of moved into the realm of being a must have.
So what was your must have, if you could name it?
My must have was freedom over my time,
Mm.
flexibility, ability to, one of the things I realized that I really didn't like was I really didn't like the bureaucracy of working in that university space, freedom from bureaucracy. And, as a social worker too, I'm the type of social worker, like many, who wants to be out there, who, I'm not a sit behind the desk kind of person. And teaching university, I had become that person that had to sit behind the desk because it's like a catch 22 because of course you want to model and you want to empower the next generation, but you also want to be out there, working in the field and along with your students if you can. But there's foundational knowledge that they have to get. So I spent a lot of time grading papers. I spent time in meetings. I spent time doing things that were important for the students. But after a while, it really started to suck my soul. So my must-haves were, I also inherited a house in Jamaica, and I wanted to be able to honor the legacy that had been left to me. And on the salary, I couldn't do it. And so again, it was like, okay, how do I create more? So my must-haves included, the financial freedom. Absolutely. That was a big part of rich social worker coming together.
One of the things that it kind of on reflecting, I was thinking about was at the time when you were feeling like, I want to be out of this bureaucracy. I want to be out of these really important yet kind of boring. I want to say boring,
monotonous,
and repetitive, monotonous tasks that we find ourselves as modern day social workers doing. No, I realized that's your response. No, but at the time.
Tell me, remind me.
Yeah, at the time, I'm thinking, I remember asking you, and it's, I'm just saying this for your viewers.
Yeah.
I remember you wanting to have something different, but not necessarily connecting to the different that you wanted to.
It's true. Oh, yes, that's true. And
I think it'd be so important for others to know.
It is important because I'm talking to a lot of social workers now, right? Who just know they want something different. They don't know what they want. They don't know how it's going to happen. And that's you're absolutely right. That's exactly where I was. And Marie, I don't know if you remember, I was sad for a long time because I just felt very frustrated that I couldn't figure out, like I didn't know what the options were. I didn't know what my next move was. Should I move back to the States? Should I, quit this job? What
I remember. I absolutely remember. I mean, I'm a hugger, and usually hugs can do it, but hugs weren't doing it for you. You were like so frustrated and saying to me, Marie, this is the thing that I wanted to remind you. You said, Marie, if I leave social work, I don't know what I'm qualified to do. I don't know what skills I have. And I was like, this woman, I can't believe this woman that I'm seeing very competently managing conferences, international speakers, several year groups, hierarchy in university, managing the international travel, owning a property in Jamaica. She's looking me in the face with tears in her eyes, saying, I don't know what I can do.
I'm even tearing up. I'm even tearing up, just like I'm feeling emotional thinking about it, because I really did feel like I was really in a lot of pain and frustration for a long time, just really frustrated. And I could not see how my skills translated. I really couldn't see, because I think when you're trained in social work, and I assume that I did this with my students as well, you're fed this idea that you could do anything, but we don't actually articulate what those anythings are. And so, as an aside, that's one of the things that I've tried to do with my channel and with my business. That's why I have these different interviews, because I'm showing social workers, like, hey, here's people that are trained in social work, but they're doing different things. And I didn't feel like I understood how to make those things work. And you're right, I didn't know how to speak outside of social work.
Exactly, because you saying that at university, they say you can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
They say you can do anything with social work at the end of it. You can be a medical social worker, you can go into probations, you
Mm-hmm.
can be in children's services.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about very a range of roles
Mm-hmm.
within the kind of almost like the governmental range of
The micro,
social
meso,
work.
macro social work.
Yeah,
I think a lot of that is, I think what's said assumes that we're speaking more broadly, but what's heard is within that, more narrow construct of social work roles. Um, and so I didn't know how to translate
mm,
outside of those social work roles. And what I recognize now is we really can do quite a lot, because here's the thing: social work is really a degree in peopling, right? And people are everywhere. so
yeah,
so I think where we have to get better at is exposing ourselves as a profession outside of social work into to areas like technology and business and environmental spaces, like, because I think when we're learning these things and when we're looking at people and models and systems, again, we're looking at them through what other social workers are doing in a social work lens. But we've got to surround ourselves with people that aren't in social work and that are in these other spaces. And a lot of times they're the ones that can point out our value. But for me, again, I think as I've learned the language of business, as I've learned the language of coaching, I've been able to kind of get a better understanding, not kind of, definitely, absolutely, really understand how my social work skills just enhance anything that I'm doing. So yeah, language, I think, is really important for social workers to understand. For example, we may say in social work problem solving, um, or assessing, whereas in business they'll say something like,
solutions.
solutions, right? Exactly, business solutions, or they'll say prospecting or something like that. But we're essentially talking about the same things, but we're using different language. And so that's a really important lesson that I try to get across to social workers, and hopefully they could hear me as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So, in beginning to talk and have a language to describe the reality out of the traditional social work, what was the mediums that helped you move from that place of, I know what I don't want, but I'm not
Hmm.
quite sure I know what I do want?
Hmm.
What kind of tools did you use to start
Hmm.
exploring what you did want?
So I'll answer this just with a disclaimer. And the disclaimer is, had I had income and money, I feel like the process would have been sped up, because I would have paid for a lot of the learning that I had to do on my own. No shade to that, because now I'm able to really help other people at any stage that they're at. But tools. Listen, connecting with people like you who are on a similar journey, I think for a lot of us who start in this entrepreneurial path, we're probably not going to be surrounded by a lot of entrepreneurs, and so it can get lonely. I joined a lot of or a few Facebook groups where there were other entrepreneurs. I signed up for about every free webinar, online business webinar that I could. I read books, and I always say this, but I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. That was probably like my gateway book into this world of entrepreneurship, because the author, Robert Kiyosaki, talked about wealthy people. And he said what they do differently than poor people is they create assets. And so, I learned about, like, I looked into, okay, like, how do I create an asset? And I had this book on my mind and on my heart. And I said, okay, if I write this book and I self-publish it and somebody buys it, then I would have actually created an asset. And I actually did that. And that was like an experiment for me financially, but it was also something I wanted to get off my chest. And so just kind of experimenting and doing things, I pulled together a group of guys that I heard that were in the area where we lived in Mandeville, Jamaica. And every time I would speak to these guys individually, they all used the same kind of language. So they were talking about business building, and they were using words like creation and abundance and attraction. And I said, I just want to get you guys in a room together. And the meeting was just supposed to be like an hour, just everybody, hey, oh, maybe, you're into this, and to see if they clicked. That first meeting ended up being, I think, 4 hours. And it turned into a weekly mastermind. And so that was a lot of my learning as well, just being able to kind of pull those guys together, but sit down and listen to people who actually had businesses and listen to their ups and downs and recognize that, oh, hey, even though this guy, has this big business, he's making a lot of money, he still has the same types of problems that I do. He's still, trying to learn in this area and trying to broker a deal here. And so that was really eye-opening as well. And just, I think, trying to surround myself with people, changing my language, like I said, and changing my mindset. And I kept hearing this thing about, wealthy people think differently. And I was like, what the heck does that mean? And, I listened to people like Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and, like I said, Robert Kiyosaki, and they were all talking about, and T. Harv Eker, and they were all talking about having this wealth mentality and bettering yourself. And I was like, what the heck is a wealth mentality? And again, so you asked, what did I do on that journey? I just kept digging. I said, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to share it with other social workers, because one of the things I found out was there's a thing called a money thermostat. And it's just, this kind of phenomenon that we all kind of have our thermostat set when it comes to money. And so if you're used to having $10 in your bank account, even if you get $100,000 or $1 million, pretty soon you're probably going to end up with about $10 again, if that's what your money's a thermostat is set at. And so I learned, that we learn about these things, or we adopt these practices with money from our childhood. And when I look back, I recognize that, okay, there were three major influences in my life when it came to money. One was church, one was home, and one was social work. And so I said, okay, I'm going to figure this out, how people make money. I'm going to come back and tell all the social workers I know, because when I realized that a lot of the messages that I had been, that I had received about money, and this thermostat that I had set for myself was really low. A lot of it came from social work. And so, again, reading all of these books, kind of, just trying to understand what was a wealth mentality and how could I change mine, just really made me determined to come back to the social work community and tell others how to do it for themselves. So that was a lot of my learning, and I'm still learning now. I still love, anything self-help that will expand my how big I dream, and how generous I can be. Those are the things that I think I'm into right now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you brought up the mastermind group, because I think that was pivotal.
Yeah.
In terms of the contact that we have with others we tend to socialize within the same profession.
Mm-hmm.
So we tend to, social workers tend to have friends who are social workers,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to say the sister professions like teachers and nurses. And one of the things that's important for us in entrepreneurism is to make those links. And I saw you really, boldly step out into making new relationships, and making new relationships with almost anybody who was on that journey, or who could inform that journey. So I remember you making connections with the local MP and coming back to me and saying, hey, Marie, they don't intend to spend any money. They expect us to find money to spend on social work programs and initiatives. They're
Mm-hmm.
asking us, where's the money coming from? When I'm going to them to find out, have they got any money?
Yeah.
And those conversations with people like the heads of USAID, people who were organizing budgets in UNICEF in Jamaica, the local minister. It really, transformed the way that I saw you thinking about money. And it was like going back to school again for you. And on the sidelines, the conversations that we had because Eva and I have for years had peer supervision, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic space for us.
Yeah.
To kind of just share our learning, do cross fertilization. And I just remember that was years of that kind of conversation with significant persons within the business world. I remember you going into the hotel industry at one point and doing some consultancy for them, and they were talking about millions of dollars. And so we had to I don't even remember one supervision where we was just talking about, let's talk about millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands. Let's talk about pounds and let's talk about US currency. And although that might seem more common amongst practitioners now to be looking at the money end of things, initially it wasn't in the regular social workers remit. And so that I think it's important for others to kind of know that it might not come naturally to them to just talk about money and talk about not only talking about money and talking about wealth, but getting your head around charging X amount of money for the service that you're planning to offer out of your mainstream piece of work.
Yeah. So two things are coming up for me as you're talking. I forgot the first one, but the second one is, you're talking about like building a business and money for the business and things like that. But I really had a hard time looking at my personal bank account because there was nothing in it. And when I talk to social workers or just people in general, there's a lot of shame around, the debt that they have or, the amount of money that they make and not being able to make ends meet. And for anybody that's listening, I got you because I was there as well. And I think I remember a conversation you and I had, and you said something about, me not knowing my value or knowing my worth, or, one of those peer supervisions, I think, where we talked about we had to do some work around me and my value, my worth, and what that had to do with my bank account, what I thought I could charge. Because I'm trying to start a business. I'm starting this business, still unsure of what business I'm actually starting and what I could offer. But at the same time, having this debt in Jamaica, plus having debt in the US, worried that, oh man, if something happens to somebody outside of the country, I don't have the fare to get to the airport, much less get on a plane. And so all of that, I felt like, was part of the journey. I'm really glad to be on the other side of that journey now.
One of the things about this woman is, even though you say that you didn't have the journey to get to the money to get to the airport or get on the plane, she consistently made the journeys. You really took risk in those initial days, and got wherever you needed to go and said, Marie, I'm just gonna have to find a way.
Yes. At the expense, though, a lot of times of food or putting money on, the phone, because in Jamaica, the phones at the time were prepaid. Well, that's what I could afford. So, I don't expect anybody to especially if you've got dependents and things like that. Don't expect anybody to have to go through that. But